All right, Mr. Chair, 6 o'clock.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Jim, do you want to give a few instructive things about how the meeting will be carried on?
Yes, good evening, everyone. This is the Town of Stockbridge Board of Health meeting for June 16th, 2022, 6 p.m. Pursuant to the Governor's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, this meeting is being held via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Every effort is being made to ensure that any member of the public may access the meeting in real time via technological means. Agendas will be amended to show the link and participation code to access the meeting no sooner than 48 hours. Recordings and/or draft proceedings of the meeting will be available on our website as soon as possible. And the meeting will also be accessible to CTSB of Southern Berkshire. Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Okay, did everybody understand that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order. And first of all, I want to welcome John Ladici, our newest member to the board. He was just recently voted onto the board for a 3-year term. Welcome aboard, John. I also want to publicly thank Ray Williams for all the work she did during the last 3 years while she was on the board. Ray, thank you very much for all that help. Now the next item on the agenda is election of officers to the Board of Health. So John, just to bring up to speed, every year when we have new elections, we have new elections on the Board of Health as well. So I need nominations right now. I'm looking for nominations for the chairman of the Board of Health. Any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Charles Kenny, Dr. Charles Kenny, for chairman of the Board of Health.
Second that.
Well, thank you both. That's the two of you, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you for your confidence. We need also to elect a secretary. Can I have nominations for secretary? I nominate John Ladici.
I second.
John, do you understand what it is to be the secretary? You'll be taking the minutes
Notes, yep.
and arranging the trips to Barbados.
Any other trips also.
Any other trips?
If any.
And
All
you
right.
know,
Okay, so all in favor of John as secretary?
aye.
Aye. Okay, John, you're the secretary. Henry, will you
Okay.
just give him the nuts and bolts of that once the meeting is over?
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we also have to approve the prior minutes. Has everybody received copies of the minutes from August no, wait a second. I don't think I have
August
the
the
right
30th.
minutes. What was the last minute meet?
August the 30th, according to
August
this.
the 30th, 2021. Everybody read those minutes?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Any suggested corrections?
I move that we accept the minutes.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so thank you very much. We've moved on to the next agenda item, which is going to be a public hearing concerning a well variance request at 38 Lake Drive, Stockbridge, Mass. And the applicant is Michael Ballora. I would like to open the hearing. Would anybody like to speak?
Mr. Chair, if we could allow Brent White to give a quick overview to the board and then open up the public hearing for comments.
Okay, we can do it that. Would anybody object to that?
Nope.
Okay, so I'll temporarily close the hearing and we'll have Mr. White present.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you all very much for your time. Again, my name is Brent White from White Engineering in Pittsfield on behalf of Michael and Rebecca Ballora. And the subject of this evening's hearing is for the construction, as part of a larger project to demolish and reconstruct a single-family home at 38 Lake Drive. Specifically, in this case here, as a part of this reconstruction, the applicant seeks to construct an on-site sewage disposal system here. The property is currently serviced by a tight tank, and we have actually, Jim, if you don't mind closing your screen here, I have a colored drawing that might be easy to.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Is my site plan visible for you all?
Yep.
Okay. So if I may orient you to our site here, towards the top of the sheet is Lake Drive. What you see shaded in orange is essentially the footprint of the proposed single family home, essentially in the same location as the existing. And it should also be noted that as a part of this demolition and reconstruction, that the number of bedrooms in the home will remain the same at 3. So that allows us to pursue, frankly, to have the opportunity to even ask for local upgrade approvals and variances under Title V. As I mentioned, that the property is currently serviced by a tight tank, which is right over where my cursor is right now currently. And really the reason that we're here this evening is it is not uncommon for an applicant to seek for a proposed septic system to be within 100 feet of a well on their own property. But in this case here, we're not only seeking to be within 100 feet of our own property, we also have a neighboring well, which our proposed septic system is greater than 50 feet, but less than 100 feet. So if you can follow my cursor here, which is shaded in this blue, is the proposed leach field. And where my cursor is now is our neighbor's well. So you'll know our well, where my cursor is now, is closer to the septic system than the neighbor's well. But unfortunately, the Lake Drive neighborhood is very small lots, kind of somewhat on top of each other here. And we certainly do our best to work with the site constraints that we have. In order to facilitate this request here, the applicant has instructed us, and we have designed a proposed septic system that incorporates multiple what are known as innovative and alternative technology systems, but that's approved by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. For those who may not be familiar, Title V, the state sanitary code, looks for us as designers to ultimately come up with what's known as maximum feasible compliance, and that is through a series of technologies that the department has approved, come up with a situation with a functioning system that provides an equivalent or better level of protection. And in this case here, we've incorporated 2 technologies as a part of this design. The first is what's known as the jet bat, and that is it's a manufactured, rather than a conventional septic tank where waste flows in and solid matter settles out by gravity, as well as fats, oils, and greases that rise to the top. In this case here, the jet bat actually has a mechanical aeration system that provides a higher level of quality of the water is cleaner coming out of a jet bat unit than a conventional septic tank itself. The second element of the system that is an approved innovative and alternative technology is the leach field, which is constructed utilizing the product known as the Perk-Right drip dispersal. If you reviewed septic system plans, you may see the old conventional 3/4 inch stone with a 4-inch perforated pipe. Plastic chambers have become more prevalent over the last 20 years, and then really in the last 15, the drip irrigation has become even more popular. And really the benefits to it are every time your pump is activated, that the system is fed by multiple zones of drip tube, but we take advantage of our full leaching area every time a pump kicks on. When you have a gravity-fed septic system, only really the first few feet are at the beginning really truly functioning as a leach field. So our entire 500 square foot leaching area, when our system doses, we're taking full advantage of that. And really the benefit is by spreading that out over a larger area and also having a cleaner water coming into the leach field here, ultimately that is what allows us to protect the groundwater. One of the requirements that the applicant has, and one of the benefits of the system, in my opinion, is the fact that upon receipt of a variance and a plan approval and ultimately a disposal works construction permit, once the system is constructed and kind of started up here, ultimately the owner needs to sign a maintenance contract with a certified wastewater operator. For actually each individual system has that inspection requirement. So before a certificate of compliance will be issued by the Tri-Town Health Department, the applicant or their selected vendor will need to provide to the department a copy of the signed contract that understands that the inspection of both the jet bat and the Perk-Right will be happening per the requirements of the Mass DEP when they approved both of those systems for use. The Lake Drive area is known for having a number of these variances where, again, just by virtue, the property itself is only a 1/4 acre, and the applicant has actually worked closely with our neighbor to the north, whose well that we're seeking the relief, setback relief from, to actually establish what's known as a boundary line agreement. The deeds between the properties go back, and the monumentation in the field doesn't match, but they worked closely with him, and they certainly understand that the applicant is moving forward with this project. Our application is currently before the Conservation Commission, and we are in the process of filing our special permit to the Planning Board under the Lake and Pond Overlay District, as well as to the Select Board, because it is a pre-existing non-conforming structure on a pre-existing non-conforming lot. So in conclusion, I'll keep my remarks brief, and just first off, thank you all for your time in setting this meeting here. It's a great help to us to keep the project moving forward here. We worked very extensively over the last few months with the health department first as a part of the soil evaluation, as well as coming up with what we feel is the best solution in terms of providing an on-site septic system as compared to a tight tank. It's a much preferred solution. It doesn't require the tight tank to be pumped sometimes on a weekly basis during summer use. We have the protections in place with the operation and maintenance contracts for the septic system components. And we also understand, as a part of a receipt of a disposal works permit, the applicant will also be required to test both their well as the neighbor's well for at least 2 years, initially when the system is constructed, as well as 2 years following, to ensure that our system is not having an adverse impact on their well. As a professional engineer, we've designed this and had this circumstance under numerous communities throughout Berkshire County, and seen it with great success, and have a great level of confidence that between the jet bat and the perk right here, we'll have a great solution for the applicant as well as for the neighbor here. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you very much. Jim, I just wanted to make sure that we've contacted the neighbor who is related to the variance that's being requested, and that neighbor has not offered any objections about this.
I haven't received any calls or emails. Brent, just to confirm, you did send that out to the abutters?
We did, yes. The day that the hearing was solidified with the Zoom link, we sent a certified letter, and we've not received any phone calls or emails. And in recent discussions with my client, they have not heard anything from the neighbor either. And when I just look at the participant list, I don't see anybody else who's on the call other than the board members and Director Willis.
Jim, I have a question. This seems to be pretty close to the wetlands. What do you have to say about that?
Well, based on what Brent had said, this is an innovative alternative system, and it complies with Title V. And typically, while I can't speak for the Concom, they want to see our approval that, before it gets to the Concom. And, having this type of pre-treatment system actually betters the environment. I actually have no concerns with the wetlands.
Okay, so as far as just so that I understand what we're dealing with here, as far as the Title V is concerned, everything is totally kosher. There's nothing that has to be accommodated with respect to Title V. It's totally covered by the Title V law at this point. And it's the local bylaws that are really being asked to be modified, or let's say accommodate this with the variance. Is that right?
Yeah, so it meets Title V, but the variance requests, which Brent has requested, is the sole jurisdiction of the Board of Health to make that approval.
But every other overseeing legislation is totally consistent with that and requires no other kinds of variances or other kinds of challenges. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. And as far as the Stockbridge Bowl is concerned, the setbacks, I see that there are two sort of semicircles there, one drawn with a larger radius than the other. Can you explain why you have that?
Yes, sir. So, and that really what that is intended to show the fact it's the setbacks to the two wells that are close to each other. If I use the highlight function, my draftsman didn't color this, but this is the location of our existing well with the setback, and then this is the setback to the neighbor's well. So in this case here, it shows our well is actually closer to the septic system that we're proposing than the neighbor's well. And if I may just speak briefly to the conservation matters here, we actually have had, we've brought this before the Conservation Commission in an informal capacity, as well as through the formal filing of our notice of intent. And they've understood, again, based upon the site constraints and the wetlands, that the priority has been to maximize the setback away from Stockbridge Bowl, that is the priority of wetland resource areas to try and protect. and the fact that we're going to construct this system both with an impermeable liner as well as some sort of block retaining wall to contain the system here, that really the wetlands themselves are not going to be adversely impacted. There's a septic system that the Conservation Commission just approved, essentially the same distance away from the wetland, just southwest of this location for 36 Lake Drive. So I think the commission certainly understands that there's the need for the systems to be within 100 feet of the wetland here, and have essentially stated, I won't speak for them, but Director Willis is correct that typically as a part of the notice of intent process, they will wait till the board until we've received the health department's plan approval letter. And in this case here, the mechanics required that this board hold a public hearing to vote on the well setback, because it is a well not subject to the actual property that the application is proposing.
All right, thank you, Brent. Are there any other questions? John, Hank?
Yeah, the question I have, I'm John Loidice, and I'm new to the board, so forgive me if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but is it the setback to the well that's requires the variance?
That is correct, sir. That is correct, sir. And the fact that it is a well on a neighboring property is what requires the hearing to be held, and not simply reviewed by Mr. Willis's office.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And again, the neighboring property has not made any objections, as far as you know?
That is correct, sir. And they've been notified of this hearing, as well as for the Conservation Commission hearing. We received no feedback to either, and they will also be notified again when we have a public hearing with the planning board under the Lake and Pond Overlay District, and finally with the select board. So they've already received numerous notifications and will continue to do so throughout this process.
Jim, do you have any questions?
No, I mean, I'm pretty satisfied with the proposal, and I think we've laid everything out. And again, speaking, being a member on the Stockbridge Bowl Steward Commission, we have talked about the need for sewer expansion for quite some time, and I've advocated strongly on that. But without that happening, these are the types of systems that we would want and prefer around the bowl until such time we would, get a sewer expansion. These are basically mini wastewater treatment plants, and the quality of effluent coming out to the septic field it's not drinking water standards, but it's pretty darn close. And
it's a dose of chlorine away from meeting those requirements. So it's a very, very high quality.
And these are the types of systems that I would advocate for. And that's exactly what Mr. White and his client have provided to this board.
Okay, good. So then if there isn't any objection, I'm going to reopen the hearing for any public discussion and input. So as of this time, what exactly 6:18 p.m., let's open the hearing. Is there any public input? Do you see anybody on the agenda there? Anybody like that? I don't either. Anybody raising their hand that anybody can see?
Oh, sir.
Okay. All right. Since there's nobody there, I'm going to close the hearing. I'm going to ask the board for a little discussion here about it and give your opinions about what you think should be done. So, John, would you like to start?
Yes, I would like to ask Jim before well, I guess we'll start by what kind of testing are we going to require to do after we approve this?
Yeah, so for the well testing, so typically what we do, John, is if there's a setback to an abutter's well less than 100 feet, we require that the applicant, in this case, it's Brent's applicant, to test their own well and the neighbor's well for drinking water standards, the standard coliform, E. coli, and there's other parameters that DEP has set to test. And so they have to do it before the permit, and then they can do it additional 2 years. That's just it's not a requirement under Title V to require that, but that's sort of like what we require locally. It's just additional protections just to make sure everything's functioning correctly. So it's just your typical, what they call Title V water quality test that they do.
So the follow-up question is, are we testing it for them, or are they
No.
hiring someone else to to test?
No, it's a separate agency that does that type of test.
Okay.
And the testing is done initially and then done after 2 years, and does it go on after that? Is there?
No, just 2
Further
years.
testing?
Yeah,
Okay.
just to make sure everything's functioning. And again, my follow-up, and I know you didn't ask this, but part of having this system in perpetuity of the life of the system,
Mhm.
even if they sell the property, that has to have a valid operation and maintenance contract over the life of the system. So there's a constant oversight of this septic system, and there's been a long track record of success on these types of systems. Something decides to go haywire with it, the operator who comes out frequently will catch what's going on with the system and make its necessary repairs.
Thank you, Jim. Hank, do you have any questions on this?
No, I think
Anything
my
to say,
questions are
any
answered.
comments? No?
Well, my only comment is I wish there was a sewer system going down Lake Drive. I live on Lake Drive. Luckily, I am hooked up to the sewer because I live on, the very end of it. But the sewer needs to go down the whole area of Lake Drive. It's the only way this lake is going to be saved, especially from this, this area.
Okay, well, I know the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Commission has been looking at this idea, and so has Sewer and Water in the past. And I think that it'll probably come back again. Jim, would you prefer to have this kind of system or a sewer connection?
Sewer.
Yes.
The applicants would prefer to have sewer as well. And they've asked me to understand if what is forthcoming with the town. And I've unfortunately had to explain that there's nothing on the timeline of this construction that would be available for them to tie into. And Title V would actually say, even as a part of a granting of a local upgrade approval, or in this case here, a variance with respect to the well, if a municipal sewer becomes available, a literal interpretation of Title V would say that the property owners need to connect, and we would have all the infrastructure to very easily make that connection as a part of what we're installing today. So should a sewer come down the road 20 years from now, I'm sure the Bloras would be more than happy to reclaim some of the yard for something other than a raised putting green.
Yeah, and these are very expensive systems, folks, that not only from a designer perspective, but the installation, the materials, and the products. These aren't $15,000 systems. These are very expensive systems, and on these very small lots with wells. And I don't want to get away from what the intent of this hearing's about, but preferably, of course, sewer.
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, if the neighbor had objected, I'd be reluctant to grant a variance, but since the neighbor has been fully notified on multiple occasions and doesn't have any objection, hasn't brought forward any objection, I don't see any particular, it seems scientifically that this is a very defensible project, that it seems as though it's taken all the precautions necessary to protect the neighbor's well, the owner's well, and the bowl, as well as the wetlands next to it. And of course, that'll be part of the Concom's look. But so I'm in favor. As far as I'm concerned, I would support the idea. Does anybody want to have anything else to say before we call for a vote? Okay, can I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Okay,
Seconded.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. So I'd now like to ask if you members of the board don't have any further discussions or anything to put in, if we could vote on this according to what you think. Can I have a motion to vote on this? Would you like to do that, Hank?
Yeah, I'd like to move to approve this variance.
Okay, John, would you like
I
to
second that motion.
Okay, and I second it as well. All in favor, can we have a roll call vote? Jim, you want to take the roll call vote?
Dr. Kenny,
Yes.
Dr. Ledice,
Yes.
Dr. Schwerner.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a unanimous approval. Thank you for coming and
Oh,
explaining.
thank you all.
Okay, and thank you, Roxanne. I see you were here too. Thank you very much for visiting. Roxanne is on the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Commission now, you know. So I'm sure that this is going to be a subject of interest to the commission in the future. Okay, so next item of business are Tri-Town updates. Jim, do you want to give us that?
Yeah, let me just pull up my community forum. So just as a reminder, we're working, Tri-Town and the boards of health are working with Austin Riggs to hold on Saturday, July 9th from 9 to 10:30 a.m. at the Marian Fathers at Eden Hill, Stockbridge, a community forum. And the subject is grappling with COVID-19. What can we learn from our experiences during the pandemic? So that's that announcement, and the board has any questions on that.
Jim, is this, the public is being invited to this location to hear speakers? And who are the speakers?
The public is invited. Dr. Kenny, do we know exactly who the speakers are from Riggs?
Yeah, the basic idea, John, is that the initially it was the Tri-Town's interest in making sure that we were following through in dealing with the coronavirus disease as thoroughly as possible. So initially we were dealing with the germ all the time with masks and vaccinations and social distancing and testing and all that other kind of stuff, quarantining. And then as the disease, the germ part became under control, it became clear that there were a lot of indications that there was social or psychopathology potentially out there, or at least not, if you don't want to call it pathology, there was certainly a lot of stress and other kinds of negative effects still potentially lurking out there. So we basically, the different chairs, Bob West, Isaac, Diane Romeo, and myself spoke to the select board and other members of the community to see if they had the same feeling that we were having, that this might be a persisting thing. And many of them did it. In fact, then we met with the Riggs people. We had a Zoom session with Ed Shapiro, who's the current director of the Erickson Institute, Donna Elmendorf and Jerry Fromm, all from that institute. And they agreed with us that there were quite a number of persisting negative effects that were not directly germ related, but they were related to the social isolation that had occurred during this period of time. And at that meeting, we had various people speak to the idea that they saw that this pathology was occurring. So, for example, Mary Beth Mitz from the Lennox Select Board mentioned that they were having very poor attendance in all of their meetings, whether they were electronic or not. They weren't, and then there were a number of different situations where people were having a hard time agreeing on things, and the seniors. So one of the people from Lee spoke about the fact that there were problems with the seniors coming to the senior centers. They weren't showing up. Nobody was coming back, even if they had been vaccinated or things like that. So those same people will open up the session with the Riggs people. It's going to be hosted by the Riggs people. They're going to run the whole thing. But these same people will start the session by speaking, but anybody can speak. There will be speakers. It's not going to be an educational forum in terms of anybody who knows a whole lot about this teaching anybody anything. It's really going to be more of everybody explaining to everybody else what they had to go through as a kind of a cathartic experience, hopefully. And from there, whatever seems to be necessary to be done will be done. Maybe, hopefully nothing, but maybe it will just be the venting, that will suffice, in terms of helping people to understand stuff. But I was talking to a BMC nurse, an emergency room nurse the other day, and she told me that, they felt during this whole epidemic that they were behind the 8 ball, that people didn't appreciate how dangerous the situation was for them. People were very brittle in terms of how they dealt with them. They didn't give them even, in the past, even if people came in burned or whatever, they used to always be, to some extent, grateful, but nobody seemed to show that during this period of time, the nurses thought. So I think each group has its particular way that they feel like this has bothered them. And maybe it's fading away. And I certainly, my own feeling is that maybe it is fading away a little bit, but we just want to make sure that if anybody is still out there who has a lot of problems lingering, that we give them the chance to express themselves and go forward from there. And if you want to speak, you can speak too.
Thank you, Charles.
Any other questions or comments on the forum? And I want to just thank, everyone that was involved in putting this together, including Riggs, to be able to pull this off. And I'm looking forward to attending, and
the Marian Fathers for donating their space.
Fathers,
Very
yeah.
generous.
I don't really have a lot of updates. We're still in the yellow sort of medium category. The numbers are somewhat stabilizing. I'll see if I can pull up the last week's numbers. It's in an email format, but overall Stockbridge is looking pretty good. This is for all Southern Berkshire, which is part of our collaborative towns. We're still getting some cases, but they're settling down. But you look at Great Barrington for May 8th, 81, and they're down to 20. So things are starting to settle down. Schools getting out. The nursing homes had a couple issues here and there, but things have kind of settled out. And it's COVID's still here, and people need to take calculated decisions on whether to wear a mask or not. And don't really have much more to report on that. We are getting, the State Department of Public Health is issued more at-home test kits to Tri-Town and some of the other municipalities, and we're pushing those out the door, getting them to the senior centers, places in need, and as well as probably maybe needing them in the fall. Because once the fall comes, the DESE in the state has already announced that they're no longer pool testing anymore at schools. And so with no more pool testing for monitoring, less PCR tests, more at-home tests, which don't get reported into the Maven system, we're trending to a point where people just need to make calculated decisions on what they're doing and self-test and continue to isolate for 5 days. And if they're symptomatic on day 6, to mask at work for the remaining 5 days. I'm not sure where CDC and DPH is, if they're going to change the 5-day isolation guidance. We're not really sure, but for now, for those that are positive, the day they test, they need to be in isolation for 5 days. Don't really have anything more. The Tri-Town budget passed. We're working on fiscal closeout, and we're just working really hard with our nurse program in South County. We're doing a lot of different things. We're an official vaccine provider through Tri-Town and through Southern Berkshire, and we'll be providing all the flu clinics in the fall, possibly some boosters. And outside of that, it's a really busy summer. A lot of camps, a lot of inspections, and the staff they're just working really hard on trying to get caught up. It's going to be a very busy summer.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else have anything to add here about the updates at Tri-Town? Okay, well, I think that covers the agenda at this point. So again, I'd like to welcome you aboard, John. And again, thank Ray for her service, and we're going to miss her in the future. And Jim, thank you for your help. So I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Oh,
Good night,
by the way,
everyone.
one other thing. You
Yeah.
want me to speak with John about the minutes and how I did the minutes, and you can speak about how you did the minutes after we adjourn?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing to do. It's a procedural item. If you can explain that to him, I'd appreciate that. And I think John
Sure.
will, just so he can get going, make sure he knows to do it in English,
Okay. So we
We
have
adjourning
motions and
first, or are
second.
we discussing
Have a
this?
motion.
We adjourn first, I believe.
Yeah, we'll adjourn. Okay, so
Okay.
John, you're going to hang in and Hank's going to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Okay. Thank
Good
you for-
night.